Hey there, and welcome back to the UnYoked podcast, where we have real conversations for people walking through real pain, especially the kind that comes after a divorce. If you're listening today, chances are you're feeling a little unmoored. Maybe you've been trying to hold it together on the outside, but inside, it's chaos, grief, anger, loneliness, and sometimes more questions than answers. I get it. I've lived it. Today, we're going to talk about how to actually recover from divorce, not just survive it, but to find your footing again, emotionally, spiritually, and practically. I'll walk with you through the 7 struggles that almost everyone faces and share the same kind of tools and perspectives I teach inside my UnYoked Divorce Recovery course. This isn't going to be a sales pitch, but if the course helps you, great. If this episode gives you a breath of hope on its own, even better. Either way, I'm glad you're here. You know, a lot of you know that I worked with Insight for Living, the Bible teaching ministry with Chuck Swindoll. And one thing his wife, Cynthia, a wonderful lady, she told me one day, I was like, what makes Insight for Living different than other ministries? And she goes, well, many are just broadcast. They just take teaching and they record it and put it out there. She goes, Chuck and I always wanted to make sure we didn't leave the baby at the doorstep. We didn't just hand you God's word and then walk away and good luck on your own. She goes, and we wanted it to be like a church, if you will, not technically, but we wanted to be a two-way street. Well, when I created this podcast, I really honestly was creating it because I wasn't finding what I was looking for. And you can go back and listen to my original episode, which tells you sort of the why, but it was the people in the church world that were quote unquote ministering to us hadn't even walked the walk. And it was very Christian-ese. Here's what the Bible says about marriage and divorce. And it wasn't practical about, what you're really going to walk down. What roads were you really going to walk down? What are the landmines? So when I created this podcast, I created 17 episodes. I had thought long and hard about each one of those, of speaking into those monumental times post-divorce, the things you're dealing with. Like, you're going to deal with the loss of friends. You're going to deal with, what are you going to deal with sex? We're going to talk about it. Things you'll never, ever, ever hear from the pulpit, unless it's with a Bible verse that just says, here's your trump card, sort of like, hey, I'm anxious. Well, here's the verse. Don't be anxious. Now quit being anxious. Go away. Well, that's not practical, right? Especially when you're dealing with, your life being turned upside down with a divorce. Well, I did what I thought a pretty good job of identifying, speaking to, offering advice, and even just resonating with people. I get told, one of my episodes about losing friends, I was told somebody gave that episode to all their friends. They go, this guy put into words all the things I'm feeling and all the things that you're saying that I'm not really relating with. So it was helpful that way. But here we're at the point now where I see that I've got to dig a little bit deeper in some areas. So I don't have 17 topics for today, but I do have 7 because I ended up creating a course. And part of the reason I created the course is just like the podcast. I wasn't finding it out there. I'm a big believer in counseling, and I believe that everybody should be in counseling, divorce or not, especially marriage counseling, even after you're married. But I believe big into the power of the statement, thoughts disentangle themselves over the lips and through the fingertips. And that's best done in front of a professional who know they're professional listeners, they're professional priors, and then if they are wise and they have good Christian lenses on, they're invaluable. But not everybody has the money, the time. They don't all live in a place like I do where there's, I can throw a rock and hit 5 counselors right now just because I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. But I believe that some people are disciplined enough to do things on their own, and they can set up a ritual of taking an online course where they can take it when they can. And so I thought, I am going to build the course I wish I would have had. And so I did. It's cheap. We'll talk about that later, but I'm letting you know what 7 things we're touching on today. Right. So let's dive in. The very first thing I talk about is the one that probably hurts the most. And that is losing friends in a divorce. I don't think I've met anybody who hasn't had a pretty painful story of their loss of friend groups, maybe your spouse who should be one of your best friends. You lost them. Some people lost their spouse to them cheating with another best friend, you lost two. You just lose your friend groups. You lose people at church. It's devastating. And so I talk about how we can handle these hurtful shifts in our friendship with grace. How can we set boundaries when the other side's maybe picking sides? I talk about rebuilding safe, healthy support systems, and then how to know who you can trust with your story. So that's one module of the course that I think is absolutely critical, because it's a shell shock moment when your friend group is uprooted and the people you need to lean on the most are the people who have literally faded away. It's super tough. And then two, I want to talk about emotions, how we can navigate our emotional chaos, understand our emotional responses, even the messy ones. I used to use the word defense mechanism as a bad word. And my counselor used to tell me, like, well, not all defense mechanisms are bad. They're there for a reason. Because our job after analyzing is to find out which ones are healthy, which ones are unhealthy. You kill the ones that are unhealthy and you feed the ones that are healthy. I work on some of those exercises, and we create healthy outlets for your grief, your anger, your anxiety, all the things that are going to go on. And they're up and down. They're not like you just go through a phase and you move on. Sometimes you revisit a phase a year later. Like it's a very complicated, layered event of divorce and life change. And I want to help people navigate that. And then, of course, I move up this one to the front, even though it should be at the end, is are you ready to date again? Do you have the emotional readiness to date? Can you spot red flags in yourself and in others? How do you know whether you're really ready to date again? Can you set your own boundaries around sex, faith, your future? Date with wisdom instead of fear or anxiety. So we dive really into that with some practical tools that you can use and even score yourself on. And then, of course, module 4 is co-parenting. Not everybody that's divorced is a parent, but those who are know how complicated it can be to deal with the parent that you have normally angst for. You may grow out of that over time. But we work on creating consistent parenting rhythms, communicating effectively with as little drama as possible, and how you advocate for your child's emotional health in all your decisions. And just sometimes you just got to let go what you can't control. We talk about that pretty deep. Number 5, our module 5 is rebuilding trust in yourself and in others. After betrayal, trusting again, even in yourself, can feel risky. This module helps you restore confidence, recognize healthy people, and move forward without fear. Trust your instincts again, spot emotional manipulation or codependency. Boy, that one's a big one. And open your heart wisely without shutting it down. We'll work on building healthy, reciprocal relationships. And then module 6, back to kids, empowering your kids. Forget whether you're co-parenting or not. Your job as a parent did not end. Our kids are watching, absorbing, and reacting. And this module gives you biblical and practical tools to parent well through transition and empower your children emotionally and spiritually. What we're going to do is learn how to help kids process the divorce in age-appropriate ways, keep your home a safe emotional space, and we want to foster resilience and emotional intelligence and encourage your kids' faith without forcing it. And lastly, the big one is module 7, embracing your new identity. You are not your divorce. You are not broken beyond repair. In this final module, you'll just rediscover your God-given identity, purpose, and confidence without apology. You'll learn to let go of shame and labels, see yourself the way God sees you, and design a new life that reflects who you are becoming. You'll walk forward in faith and not fear. I want you to hear this loud and clear. Divorce does not get the final word in your story. There's healing. There's purpose ahead. And even if you can't yet see it, God's not done with you. If anything in today's episode hits home and you're wondering, okay, what do I do next? Well, I've built something that may help. It's called the UnYoked Divorce Recovery Course, and it's packed with real faith-rooted tools to walk through the storm and out the other side. You can learn more and get started by going to toddturner.com. No pressure, just the next steps if you're ready. And hey, if this episode helps you, share it with someone who might need it too. Blessings, and I will see you on the other side. If you like this content, then subscribe for even more resources, fun, laughter, and sound advice for Christians adventuring in unyoked living. Not just divorce recovery, but for brave men and women who are growing and going and living a life on mission. Blessings. Thank you for listening to the UnYoked podcast with me, Todd Turner. Can I ask you a favor? Two, actually. First, rating and reviewing this podcast positively goes a long way to help others find this resource. I get told constantly, I wish I knew of this podcast earlier. Well, you can make that happen with just a simple rating on the podcast app you're listening to right now. Also, when you're done with that, please go to toddturner.com/books and purchase, gift, and review the resources that we have available for those needing help in their divorce journey. It's a lot easier handing somebody a book sometimes than handing them a podcast. And your Amazon reviews really help get our books higher on the chart for others to find. toddturner.com/books. Thanks so much. And please, really, just review the podcast really quick. Thank you.